Modern and on two continents? Yes, that is what describes the Istanbul Tram system the best. It is a unique system, which made its return in the 90s after disappearing completely for over 20 years. After a massive U-turn in transport policy. Some of the modern day lines are definitely meant for transportation, while two lines are added to bring charm to this city of nearly 16 million people. So let's take a closer look at the trams of Istanbul, the city that connects Europe and Asia. This is the tram network of Istanbul. Let's check it out line by line. Sorry for my pronunciations in advance. Turkish is quite a difficult language. We start off with line T1, which runs between Bahçeler and Kabataş. It uses a 1435mm gauge, and its length is 19.3 kilometers. This line that passes by the famous Hagia Sophia Mosque is powered by 750 volts DC overhead wires. It uses one massive depot. The famous Heritage Line T2 runs between Taksim Square and Tuna. It is a mostly single-track route with a gauge of 1000mm, known as meter gauge. The overall length of this line is 1.6 kilometers and is also powered by 750 volts DC overhead wires. Its only depot is located at Taksim Square. Line T3 is a single-track circular route, which is being operated clockwise. Its starting point is Kadıköy and passes by Moda on its way back. The line is also using a meter gauge. The total length of the line is 2.6 kilometers and is as well powered by 750 volts DC overhead wires. And Line T3 has a small depot. Line T4 runs between Topkapı and Mescid-i-Salam. Line T4 uses a 1435mm standard gauge, and the line's length is 15.3 kilometers. This line is also powered by 750 volts DC overhead wires, and has one depot as well. Line T5, the newest of the bunch, runs between Eminönü and Ali Beyköy bus station. This line also uses a standard gauge. It has a length now of 10.1 kilometers. But contrary to the other lines, this line uses a 750 volts DC third rail. And this is not a third rail like a metro, but the Alstom APS system. This is a ground-based solution where only the part where the tram is actually above is getting powered. It is mostly implemented for visual appearance. Also, this line has its own depot. And that was a brief overview over the network. Let's now take a look at how this actually came around. In the case of the tram system, the history is kind of split in two parts. The first part of the history started like this. Operations of horse-drawn trams date back to 1871. Electrification followed in 1912. After that, the tram network grew massively, alongside the population of Istanbul, reaching over 108 million passengers per year at the greatest extent of the network in 1956. But soon after this highlight, the decline of the original network kicked in, as Istanbul chose to fully go for cars and buses. So much so that by 1966, the last line of the original network was closed. But you see, Istanbul kept growing, and by the mid-80s it was clear that the city was suffering under its choice for cars and buses. Smog and massive traffic jams were detrimental to the city, and it caused the city to reconsider its choice. By the end of the 1980s, the first metro line was built, and by 1990, the first tram, the current T2 line, returned to Istanbul. In 1992, the first section of a modern, new tram line was opened, on what is today Line T1. Line T1 was gradually extended, and in the 2000s, more and more lines were opened. The current Line T3 was opened in 2003, Line T4 followed in 2009 and was extended in 2011. Line T5 is the most modern one, with its initial section opening in 2021. Its latest extension opened as recently as the 30th of August of this year. And that is a brief overview of the history. This video about Istanbul's tram system is part of an already 20 episode long series of videos of transport systems. I would love to show you many more in the future. It would therefore be really helpful if you would press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Let's now take a look at the fleet. Due to the fact that the lines are operating completely separately from each other, the fleets between the 5 lines are completely separate as well. On line T1 we can find two types. One of these types is the Bombardier Flexity Swift A32, which entered service in Istanbul in 2004. They are made up of two cars. Often they are coupled, forming combinations of four cars, reaching a combined length of nearly 60 meters. And the second tram type that is operated on line T1 is the Alstom Citadis 304, made up of three, somewhat shorter cars. They entered service in 2011 and are operated in pairs, forming combinations of 56 meters. On line T2, the heritage line, we can find the original Istanbul tram cars, from before the massive closure of the 1960s. All of the tram cars are from the early 1900s, with the oldest originating from 1913. On line T3, we can find second-hand trams from East Germany, from Jena and Schöneiche. Oddly enough, there are two different types, although they look very similar. One of these types is the so-called Reco-wagen, built by Reichsbahn's Ausbesserungswerk Berlin-Schöneweide, and the second type is the Gotha T57 from the Gothaer Wagonfabrik. Line T4 is served by high-floor trams, which are actually also used on light rail or light metro networks. There are four types active on line T4. One of the types is a light rail vehicle built by ABB, which is very similar to the metro trains used on metro line M1. The second type is second-hand trams from the Stadtbahn of Cologne in Germany, which are built by Duwag. They are designated B80 and B100. The third type operated on line T4 are the LRV 34s, built by Hyundai Rotem. And the final type is the RTE 2014, built by the operator Metro Istanbul itself. Most trams on line T4 are operated in combinations of up to 3 units. And then comes line T5, which is less complicated as it is operated by one single type. This is the Durmastler Panorama. Made up of 5 cars, they are around 33 meters in length. And similar to line T1, they are operated in pairs of 2. The special thing about these units is that they can be powered from overhead wires and third rail. So, how well are these trams used? Well, I would say that the tram system of Istanbul is incredibly well used, showing that the city made the right decision by bringing back trams to Istanbul. As a matter of fact, it actually makes me wonder if the trams are not becoming too popular, whereas especially line T1 seems to be overloaded at times, even at the high frequency it operates at. So let's take a look at the numbers. Line T1 is by far the busiest line on the system, with a whopping 130.6 million passengers in 2022. This comes down to nearly 380,000 passengers a day on average. To just put this in perspective, other single tram lines in other cities often carry about 25 to 30,000 passengers a day. Compared to line T1, line T3 is a much calmer route, but it was never intended to carry these numbers, as it was brought back for nostalgic reasons. It nevertheless serves a small local transportation purpose, and carried nearly 1 million passengers over the course of 2022. Then line T4. This is the second busiest tram line in Istanbul, and was clearly meant to carry a lot of passengers. 61.5 million passengers used this line in 2022, which is around 168,000 passengers a day. And then line T5, as a newly opened route, is growing its ridership as well. In 2022 it carried around 7.6 million passengers, averaging around 21,000 passengers a day. This is already a relatively normal figure for a tram line, but now it is finally extended to its terminus at Eminönü. And because of this figure is expected to grow rapidly from September 2023. And then we are missing line T2. But there were no figures available, given it is a route for touristic purposes. All of the 4 lines mentioned together carried over 208.6 million passengers over the course of 2022. So what will the future bring? The trams are popular and well used, and a slowdown or stop of expansion is not foreseen yet. The project that is now under construction is line T6 between Sirkeci and Kazlıçeşme, which uses the alignment of a disused railway. It was set to open this year, but I cannot find a new date. Please let me know in the comments below if you have more news. Furthermore, some discussions are taking place on some new branches and extensions of line T4 and line T5, but none of them seem to so far have really kicked off in any way. However, on the Instagram page of Metro Istanbul, it seems that ideas are being formed for a new light rail vehicle, specifically for line T4. This goes under the working title Tram 34. So what do I think about the trams in Istanbul? First of all, the tram renaissance in Istanbul is fascinating to see. Perhaps this is one of the biggest lessons that downgrading or removing tram systems in the 1950s and 1960s has been a mistake lots of cities are making now a U-turn on. The only thing that I do not really get about Istanbul's new trams is the fact that the lines are completely separated from each other, while they provide connections at certain stations. This separation is also in the physical infrastructure. Line T1 has low floor platforms and trams are powered by overhead wires. Line T4 has high floor platforms, meant for high floor vehicles. And then finally, Line T5 uses the Alstom APS third rail for powering trams on this route. The variety in infrastructure and therefore in the tram types adds, in my opinion, unnecessary complexity, while the lines could have easily been part of one single connected network, using the same technology all over the place. But nevertheless, it is good to see trams coming back, taking a crucial role in the transport of this massive metropolis, and I hope more and more lines will follow. So with that, we have reached the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed this video about the tram system of the metropolis of Istanbul. If you'd like to see more of my work in the future, please remember to subscribe to my channel. And as always, thank you very much for watching.